microphone on. Hello, welcome to the Jude Morris Racing Foundation. Now I've turned my microphone on. I'm very quickly going to introduce our panel. First up, I'm delighted to welcome Kevin Maguire from Step One Fitness. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Excellent. I'm glad to be with you tonight.
Thank you. And last but by no means least, I'm delighted to welcome Jay Hague. Hello, Jay.
All right, Mark. Kev.
So, rather than me introduce who you are and what you do, Kevin, give us an introduction to you and what you do.
Well, predominantly I'm a performance enhancement specialist, but I'm also a certified nutritionist. I work with motocross riders kind of specifically, and I've helped them. God, now I think we're going on for about 15 years or more. I've been involved in the industry, working with people like Dean Wilson, Max Anstie, Shaun, Jay, and we brought Jay on tonight. As you can see, he's been nutritionally deficient today when he went and get that haircut. So it just shows you what happens when you're not properly, when you're not taking on the correct nutrients. So.
Can you hear us, Jay? No.
I can't hear you now, mate.
Where have you gone? Can you hear us now?
Right, so much going on here.
Again, when you've not had the correct nutrition, what happens is that brain fog can set in. A clear example of it here.
Why can't you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't even hear you.
I'm not sure what to suggest. Try it without your headphones.
Shall maybe try and leave and join back in?
We can hear you, so I don't understand why you can't hear us. It should be coming out. Daft question, but you got the volume on. Oh, he's gone.
He's gone.
So, Kevin, while we're waiting for Jay to get his headphones back in, talk us through some of the athletes that you've worked with.
So, as I had mentioned, I've been lucky enough to work with the likes of Dean Wilson, Shaun Simpson, Max Anstie, Darian Sinai when he was over for a little while. Also people like Bry Mac, Jay, and Ross Rutherford from up here as well. Lots and lots, but all different, from complete beginners at motocross all the way through to guys that have been racing GPs and AMA.
Can you still not hear us, Jay?
Is that working there?
Yeah.
So if I put my phone on aeroplane mode, will it stop it from ringing us? I think it'll work if I'm on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but I don't know if you're on aeroplane mode, if it will stop you from hearing it as well. Will it? I don't know. Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now, but
don't touch anything.
It's when people's trying to ring us on my phone.
Right, anyone watching this now, don't ring Jay. He's not going to answer. He's doing a live debate. Leave him alone.
it's all half my family asking how they're watching it.
Kevin, do you want me to get the slide? Jay, sorry, we were going to get you to introduce yourself. Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, so Jay, ride for Crediton Fast Track Honda. Obviously ride in the Pro MX2 Class, and then as well as that, I do scaffolding for JTR.
And how long have you been working with Kevin?
I think I started with Kevin 2018. Well, I gave him a call in 2017. I'd done a one-off training session before that, I think about 2015, then realised that I needed basically some professional help instead of trying to do it by myself. So 2018, I gave him a call, and it's been a big difference.
Kevin, just before we get into the slides, you and I have spoken twice, and it's been fascinating both times. And as we said, sort of like when we were off air, this is probably like, it's almost like sleep. We could do one of these every single night and still not scratch the surface. But I know when we first spoke, you were a little bit cautious about sharing some of the information, not because you didn't want to work with us or give some of the information away, but just because nutrition is a really, really individualized topic. So do you just want to explain that before we go into the slides?
Yeah. So as you can imagine, right, as living organisms, we're all very, very different. So how things work in our systems can be different from person to person. So it's quite unique. And that's why I was a bit concerned, because as much as wanting to make people understand about nutrition, it can be a very, very in-depth subject that can it's mind-blowing, and it can be really confusing. So the aim of tonight really is to try and simplify it, hopefully for the majority of people. And then if there is anything that I can help with further down the line, or if anybody's got any questions that are a bit more in depth, then hopefully we can address them. But it is very, very specific to the individual. There's a lot of factors that you have to consider when looking at nutrition, and therefore everyone tends to be different, and there isn't a one size fits all. That's the bottom line of it.
Jay, turn your phone the other way. That's it. Look at that.
But now it looks like I'm wonky.
Okay.
It's okay.
Kevin, you talk us through.
Yeah. Right. So nutrition and motocross. Okay. So let's have a quick look at what nutrition is to start with. So it's essentially the study of how what we consume affects our bodies, right? So we have biochemical processes and also physiological processes where whatever passes through our mouth interacts and has to be converted or utilized in the system. So it's also like what we need in order to survive and develop and produce energy so that we can function. So good nutrition means obtaining the right amount of nutrients from healthy sources in the right combinations. However, as we just discussed, nutrition and peak performance is a whole lot more, as you will see. If we can have another slide, please, Bob.
If this doesn't scare everyone.
Okay. So
looks like
don't worry. Yeah, don't everybody start jumping off the talk or whatever. So basically, this is a little insight into what goes on in the system. This is a metabolic pathway, okay?
I'm glad it's not a big insight.
Yeah. So you can see it is pretty in-depth. There's a lot of stuff going on. So if you can imagine inside our bodies, when we consume something, the processes that have to go on can be absolutely mind-boggling. But that's why it's important that what we take on board affects how we develop, how we live, how we progress. Again, for things like building up our immunity, especially in this day and age with everything that we're open and susceptible to. So it can be really, really in-depth. But what I'm hoping to do is simplify it a little bit. And I'll even maybe analogize it against motocross wherever we can, okay? And hopefully simplify it for people.
Okay. Next one.
Okay. Yeah, go for it. So, simple, okay? We've got VP fuel. Who doesn't love the smell of VP fuel on a bike, okay? And then we've got diesel. So, you would put the best quality fuel that you could into your bike to allow the bike to help with its performance and perform, probably get an extra couple of brake horsepower out it and really, really help the performance of the engine, okay? If you were to put diesel in your bike, what's going to happen? We've all seen this picture below probably. The guy's sitting there revving the bike and then bang. So if you put the incorrect fuel into your bike, it ain't going to perform. And it's the same with your body. Okay, so if we even go on to the next slide. So what we consume affects how we perform. Now, there's lots and lots of debates about the difference in foods and whether it's just, if you consume the correct ratios of macronutrients, you should get the same end effect. That's not the case. What you consume will affect how your body performs. And that is why it is a very individualized process. So at the top here, we've got lots of natural foods. You can see we've got carbohydrates, we've got fats, we've got proteins that are all derived from what we take on board. So you can see a few things there. We've got our meats, we've got our avocados, olives, asparagus, broccoli, all those sorts of things, right? So if we take them on in the correct ratios, then hopefully we can perform to our best potential. Whereas if you eat lots and lots of rubbish, which we've discussed that we see far too frequently at racetracks, then your performance is going to be inhibited and you won't perform to your best potential. So it's quite simple in that respect, that what you take on board does affect how you perform. But there are lots of variants to consider within that as well. And as we said, everybody is individual. So if you think of it a little bit like a bike, okay? So in order for the bike to perform, first you have to put fuel in. The fuel works its way down from the tank. It goes in towards the engine where there's a chemical process. There's an interaction to produce a spark, which essentially is the energy to let the bike ignite and then drive, okay? So if you put a high performance fuel in, essentially you're giving it more energy in order to perform better, okay? And it's a cleaner fuel. It burns better, it burns more efficiently, so that there's lots of benefits for the engine and also the performance. Whereas if you put a lower octane fuel in, for example, you might lose a couple of brake horsepower. It might detonate incorrectly, so there might be a breakdown in components. And the body is very, very similar. We've got to put the fuel in. It's got to work its way down through our digestive tract, where it goes through multiple chemical interactions and processes in order to essentially give us energy and also to help give the nutrients that we need for everyday living. But if you're doing that at elite level and also at basic level with motocross, because let's be honest, motocross is without doubt one of the most demanding sports in the planet, and you can't take that away from it. So therefore, we have to fuel correctly in order to protect our bodies, to heal properly, and also really to perform at the level you need to in order to participate in this sport.
Jay, do you follow a strict eating regime?
Well, basically on that slide, the bottom picture is me in the off season, and the top picture is me season.
So
Kev calls us Ricky Hatton Jr.
Yeah, and it's not because of his fighting ability; it's because of his off-season habits. And
food's my biggest thing.
So and I'll be perfectly honest, we've made some mistakes with Jay as well. So we've had to create some adaptations in that, and it is a learning process. So from a nutritional aspect, okay, let me be very clear. Nobody knows it all, and any nutritionist that says, I know exactly what will work for you, that's probably not going to be the case, okay? We can always learn, and we always need to be learning. There are specific things that we can do that will really, really kind of tighten things up to allow us to have a far, far clearer picture. But that isn't an option for everyone. So when that isn't an option for everyone, we have to look at various aspects in order how to try and get, all we're doing is we're throwing a dart at the dartboard and trying to get a bullseye or as close as we can. But in order to do that, we have to take in lots and lots of considerations, which we'll discuss further down the line. Now, we can pinpoint, but it does cost quite a lot of money to do all the tests and then to work things out when we get to that elite level. But not everybody needs to do that. We can do smaller things and break it down and make it simpler, but having that basic understanding of how the foods interact with your body and help with your performance is kind of one of the key points that we need to get across. But as I say, with Jay, he loves his food. We've had to change his intake on several occasions, we've had to look at certain things, and even at the moment, we're waiting on some information coming back to us so that we can really, really tighten things up and tailor things a little bit better for them.
I do feel a lot for motocross families, and I've done it myself. You travel to a track. You'll be familiar with this, Jay. You travel to a track. It's late at night. Pick the kids up from school, whatever. You get into a national. Yeah, there's not a great deal of choice on motorways.
No.
It's KFC,
always
it's Burger King, it's Mackey's. You get to a track as a burger van. So what do people need to do? Do they, prepare before they go?
So you've hit the nail on the head, and it's something that we'll look at. And Jay will tell you, even last week, so I was making Jay send me pictures of everything that he was eating. And he had went and he'd picked up a pasta covered in mayonnaise. He's just lucky he was a good distance away because he knows what would have happened to him. And that's because he wasn't prepared. But again, for Jay, like he said, Jay's a scaffolder. Now, this kid is one of the hardest working people that I know, because if anybody that is aware of how difficult it is to do scaffolding, to keep up a training regime and race the bike at the level he does, it is mind-boggling. Yeah. So I've got to take that into consideration. There's even simple things like Jay's little one. She's still relatively young, so that affects his sleep, which you had a great talk on last week, which again relates, everything interacts and it all works together. If one thing's out of sync, it can have a knock-on effect. So we have to take all these things into consideration. But again, if you click on to the next slide, we can go through it. Okay. So if we look at the impact on a proper nutrition program, you're going to have increased performance, increased energy and endurance, increased cognitive function, which is very, very important at the speeds these guys are doing and the terrain that they're riding on. Even the tissue quality, so the quality of the muscle and also the connective tissue that these guys are developing to help the formulation and repair of that. Joint health, again, the joints are taking an absolute tanking when they're racing the bike and when they're training. Growth and development, which is so important, especially for these younger athletes. Sleep quality, again, back to your talk. Yeah. And also it reduces, so having a good program reduces the potential of disease and disorder. And it also, in turn, all the top ones here reduce the risk of injury. Because if something's out and you fatigue, you get tired, the next thing you know, your cognitive function's not the same, you're making little mistakes. When you make mistakes, it can have an effect on your hormonal balance, and then it just has a knock-on effect. And the next thing you know, you're eating dirt or you're getting carried away in an ambulance. So it all works synergistically to help you be the best person that you can, but also to help you grow and reduce the potential of you hurting yourself.
Kevin, in terms of Jay, do you work out how many calories a day what his intake needs to be?
So with regards to that, as I say, Jay has a very demanding job. And even at the moment, we're changing that, okay? Because he's changed his job recently. So he's far more active on the scaffolding aspect of things, and then with his training. So there are multiple things that you have to consider when looking at that. So his total daily expenditure, so his total daily energy expenditure. Then we've got to look at his basal metabolic rate, also like the thermic effect of food. He's just daily been able to move and being active. Obviously, that uses fuel as a source. So there's lots and lots of components. But yeah, we're waiting on some information coming back for Jay so that we can kind of fine tune all that sort of thing.
Jay, have you noticed an improvement in your performance when you're racing?
Yeah, definitely. But like Kev said, it was last year where we made a couple of mistakes with the nutrition. And And I was getting like certain points in a race and I didn't quite have the energy. So we had to change things around. Then towards the end of the season, I was like, say the last 10 minutes, if I needed to catch the next rider or something, I had to have that little boost. And when we changed stuff around, I had the boost of energy to do it. And I was actually setting some of the fastest laps on the last lap, like, because I felt as though I had the energy. Like, because I always knew I had the fitness, but the energy was lacking, say, in the beginning of the year. And then when we changed stuff around, I managed to, we both managed to sort it out. So I did definitely feel an improvement last year. And as well as, say, in the off season, and then, to now where I'm starting to clean it up a bit, I feel a bit more lively. Like, I think when you eat rubbish and you feel dead heavy and a bit like, can't really be bothered, I think it's just, you feel lazy when you eat rubbish.
Yeah.
And then you always feel better in yourself when you're healthy.
No, absolutely. And like you say, you know, when you're riding at your level, you know, you need to hit those lap times, lap after lap, for 25 plus 2, right?
Even
you
if you
can't be being tired 10 minutes from the end, because you're either not going to catch the guy in front or you're going to be caught from the guy behind, right?
That's it. If you can maybe afford to drop off 1 to 2 seconds, but anything after that, you're going to drop a good couple of places, because, like I say,
it's so tight, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, as you can see from this, so we've got macro and micronutrients, which I'm sure a lot of you will have heard of. Okay, so the macro, as you can imagine, means large, and micro means small in essence. So if we look at the micro first, you can derive a lot of your vitamins and minerals from the food that you take on board. So example we've got there is kale. So that's got vitamin A, vitamin K, vitamin C, calcium, copper, potassium, magnesium, and even more vitamins and minerals in it. So as you can see, the micronutrients can be derived from your food. Now, macronutrients are broken down into carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. You can also look at some other things, but for the main part, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are your main kind of macronutrients. Now, I have given approximate daily intakes of carbs for athletes. Now, this is for the younger generation, okay? So we're looking at probably 18 years and 18 years old and under, so adolescent athletes at this point, okay?
Yeah.
But let me be very, very clear that this is not a blueprint for everyone. Everyone is different. So, for example, myself, 45 to 65% of daily intakes from carbs, I couldn't handle it. It wouldn't work for me. So I have to be far higher in my fat intake and my protein than I do my carbs, because my body type wouldn't handle that amount. So this is kind of blanket. It is not written down in solid, set in stone. Everyone is very, very different. But these are kind of some guidelines for the younger adolescents. Again, because they're developing and because they need that energy, they've got to help with their tissue growth, like bone formation, all that sort of thing. So with carbohydrates and motocross, many sports, in fact, there are very few sports that are like it. Motocross requires carbohydrates, okay? We need it because we are working at such a high intensity that we go into those thresholds where we need carbohydrates for fuel, okay? Lots of nutritionists would, maybe you see it, there's lots of fad diets and things like that where carbs are low. We'll discuss that later in my dislike, even for the word diet.
Yeah, however, you've got a slot. Okay, fine.
So with regards, so approximately you need 45 to 65% of your daily intake for carbs. So that helps with muscle storage. So we're looking at glycogen, how that's transferred in the liver, also into the muscles and things like that. So how it's stored. And when you're working at really high intensities, you've got to have that available to you in order to help you like produce your energy that you're required to perform at the levels these guys do. So we've got a few sources there. So again, your vegetables, oats. Can you see it, Mark?
Yeah.
Go for it. What's the next one?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot because my eyesight's terrible.
Right.
Carbohydrates.
So we've got quinoa.
Vegetables, oats, quinola.
So it's quinoa, okay?
Oh, sorry.
I chucked you under the bus there. Yeah. So quinoa, fruits, etc. Okay. So
how do you pronounce it, Jay?
What's quinoa?
There we go. Oh, jeez, I've actually.
You're both ganging up on me on that, aren't you?
It's because I've Kev spelled it to me, and I've had to search half of the stuff on this page on Google because I've never heard of it before, Kev.
So we get a lot of our carbohydrates from these sources, but again, they're all different, and the foods that we take on board are different. But if we look at carbohydrates, that's a kind of an approximate, okay? Then we go on to proteins. Now, again, protein can range widely from 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, but for adolescents in development and their requirement, it can be around 2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, okay? So your sources from that are fish, red meat, white meat, yogurts, etc. So again, they're very, very important because they help in the development of tissue and also the transportation of things. So again, proteins, very, very important. Fats, now we've all been there. Fats have been demonized for years and years and years. And what people don't realize is that without fats and proteins, we can't survive. With carbohydrates, we probably could survive, but we'd all be walking about like a zombie apocalypse. But without proteins and fats, we can't, okay? So they are required. Again, as with everything, there are good quality fats, there are bad quality fats. There are good proteins, there are bad proteins. There's good carbohydrates, there are bad carbohydrates. But some of your good sources for your fats are like your rich and oily fish like mackerel, sardines, even salmon to a degree. Yeah, your seeds and nuts, olive oils, avocados, those sorts of things. So again, we've got carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. For athletes, you need them all, okay? And it's getting the correct balance. But everyone is different. So it's very important. It's very important with your fats for vitamin absorption, also for the transport. There's so many things. As I said, I don't want to get too complicated into it, but as long as you realize that each of these things is very, very important for you to perform to the level you need to perform to.
I'm just going to bring a quick question in because I've got a couple of questions on breakfast. So someone asked me a question on Instagram, and there's another question here. So Emma says Libby won't eat breakfast, never has. What's a good boost? And then a question we took from Instagram is, what's a good breakfast for a fussy eater? I would suggest breakfast is a must, right?
Yeah, 100% don't miss out, especially on ride days. Do not neglect to take your breakfast because one, you'll probably even more and you'll be tempted to eat rubbish because you'll want something quick. It'll sit there, you'll feel lethargic, you'll probably feel a little bit, you'll feel dehydrated because normally there's lots and lots of bad carbs in there, also sodiums and things like that. So again, it is quite dependent on the individual, but try and get something that will maybe work for them. And also timing wise, make sure that you give it plenty of time before you go out on the bike. So find out something that they like and try, maybe it would be something like porridge oats, which, it's the kind of go-to thing, but you could maybe add some berries in there, maybe some oat milk, cook it properly on the pan, if they'll maybe eat that. It might be the case that you could make it into a little kind of pancake or something like that, again, to help. So it's finding out what they will eat, what they won't eat. And a lot of the time, it's people have just got this thing, oh, I'm not eating that, I can't eat that. Whereas once you get them to change their habits, Jay, for example, they find out that they quite like it. So take something on board that's going to fuel you, but it's not going to give you like a quick sugar spike. So don't take anything really, really sugary, like a lot of your breakfast cereals and things like that. What can happen is if you take them first thing in the morning, you will feel up here, and then you'll start to deteriorate, and you'll probably start to crash, and then you'll take something else again, and you just create that up-down cycle of feeling up and down all day, where we want something where we're trying to keep that kind of homeostasis and trying to keep our energy levels up there rather than crashing and then spiking, crashing and spiking, because in motocross, that is the last thing that we want to do.
Kevin, you mentioned getting breakfast in time. So let's say you start racing at 9 o'clock. What time roughly should breakfast be?
So I would say 7.
Okay,
7
so a couple of
a.m.
hours.
Yeah, so ideally 2 to 3 hours prior to that. But again, it's dependent on what you take on board.
Yeah.
You can eat just before, but you don't want to have too much protein. You don't want to have a lot of fats just before you go on the bike. And even fibre, you don't want a lot of fibre because it can unsettle the gut.
Yeah.
So and you see that quite frequently where guys will just be eating the wrong stuff at the wrong time. And the next thing you can see them like holding their gut or like feeling really uncomfortable. And again, we'll discuss that with your things like energy gels and fizzy drinks. And
that's good, because there's a few questions coming in about that as well, actually. So Jay, just quickly then, what's your breakfast? What do you have race day?
Just porridge on a if I think I'm normally out at 9:30, so obviously I know we stay in a hotel, so 7:30 I'll get me porridge, mixed berries. And then sometimes I feel a bit peckish before that, but I normally just hold off until after and then get like snack but Kev's always sent as a thing through for race day, but it's mostly porridge on a race day.
Okay, brilliant. Next slide, Kevin.
Yep, go for it. So, like I was saying, some considerations. Some will be more obvious than others when we're putting together a nutritional program. So we've got to look at the body type, okay? And again, unless we're doing like really in-depth analysis and maybe some blood work, some first morning voids, stool samples, things like that, if that's not available to everyone, so we'll maybe look at body type. We've also got to look at activity levels. So that's all through the week and also the racing aspect of it to get the amount of energy that we need in order to perform all through the week. We look at age, we look at body composition, so lean body mass, we look at weight to work that out. Also gender can be dependent on how it affects nutrition. An important one here, especially for you guys, is your work or school life balance. It has to be taken into consideration, and quite often it's forgotten about. So we've got to think about if somebody works shift patterns, if they're really, really busy at school, what they can eat, when they can eat, what they can afford to eat is also really, really important, because nutrition can be expensive to get good quality foods. So all these things have to be taken into consideration. Now, like we were saying about the splits earlier on between carbohydrates, proteins and fats, so your body type can have an effect on that, but also previous eating habits, okay? So if you've been susceptible to dieting or doing a fad sort of thing in the past, the way that your body responds to foods can be different. So we've got to get an in-depth understanding. So first thing is first, if you're working with a coach, they'll probably have sat you down. They'll have spent a good long while looking at your previous eating habits. They'll also probably track it for a couple of weeks and tell you not to change anything. Don't differentiate anything too much, so that they can get an overview of what you're taking on board. So anything that passes through your mouth, even things like medication, that can affect what nutrition you take on board. Even ancestry. So believe it or not, where your family's from can have an effect on the types of food that you've eaten or they've eaten in the past, and what might work for your body type. So there's loads and loads of considerations to take on board. So it's not just a simple process, and I see a lot of mistakes happening here. So a pro, for example, will maybe have a program. The next thing you know, that program's been given to somebody and they're following that nutrition program, and they can't understand why it's working for them or why it's not working for them. Well, let me tell you, it's because that is not for you. That is for that specific person. Now, there are blanket ones out there, but again, they're not tailored. And what works for one person is not necessarily going to work for another. So just be aware of that what the best pro in the world is eating might not necessarily work for you. Also, other things that have to be taken into consideration is they're riding, but they've also got plenty of time to recover. They're getting all the correct nutritional balance. Their food sources, supplements and things like that are all tailored to them. You might be working hard. You might not have access to foods at certain times. So everything is very dependent on the individual, and we've got lots and lots of considerations to take in before we develop a plan for people. Okay, so this slide, okay, what we're looking at here is a relative energy deficiency in sports, okay? So what I mean by that is, for example, the effects, say your program is even a couple of 100 calories out. Now, that's not a lot, okay? Let me get an example. This is a bad example here, right? Jay, close your eyes. So we've got a donut, okay? Look at the excitement in them,
sorry.
okay? So, bad example, but that donut is probably 350 calories, okay? However, if you are short and you're deficient by even a couple of 100 calories, this is the effect that it can have on your system when you're racing, okay? So, number one, decreased endurance performance, because you've not got the energy there that you need to supply you. Your concentration levels will then have a knock-on effect because they'll start to decrease. Your glycogen stores, so you're depleting your energy, you're utilising it, you've got nothing there in reserve in order to get you through your activity. Your coordination, again, concentration, coordination, you'll see that everything has a knock-on effect and it's all interlinked. You might notice it with some people at the track. So if you see somebody that's dead irritable and they're annoyed or dead fidgety or something like that, it might be that they're lacking in that energy. Again, decreased training response. The knock-on effect is increased injury risk. So if that cognitive function starts to fall, or even we lose our decreased muscle strength that we've got there, if that starts to dissipate, we lose control of the bike. And then the next thing you know, you're fatiguing, and there's you've increased that risk. So it's quite simple. Again, I'm looking at kind of the under 18 age group here.
Yeah.
So even if they're deficient by a couple of 100 calories, these are all the effects that can happen, and it's quite substantial. But again, if we went back to that other things, the benefit of having a good nutritional program that counteracts these things.
I've just popped a question up on there. A lot of questions. As I said to you guys off air, we'll get a lot of questions around the same topic, which is great. We see a lot of people now taking energy drinks, protein drinks. You know, what? First of all, Jay, do you use them?
No.
Don't
take any like energy drink or protein shakes, drinks, nothing like that. It's all
purely water.
It's all in me food.
Okay. So Kevin, from your perspective, sorry, Jay, carry on. I thought you finished. Sorry.
Oh, good lad. On time he's drinking his water. I'll just have a little sip.
Look at the glass it's in.
It's vodka.
Oh,
So
that's mine. Mine's vodka and tonic.
protein
So-
shakes, energy drinks, good,
Nah,
bad?
I never have
Like-
them. Mine's all in my food.
Jay doesn't have them for a reason, okay? But are protein shakes any good for a child that's extremely fussy? So that's the first thing. So what you'll probably find is that this protein shake will be flavoured for a start.
Yeah.
So it'll be high in like sugar content. The actual protein content probably won't be of the best quality. It'll have lots of fillers in there. So for me, I always try and initially, it's not always possible, but initially get your protein from your nutrition sources. Okay, so try and focus on the fundamentals. If they are really fussy, then it's trying to find something that works for them and agrees with them, but don't just go to supplements straight off the bat. And it's something that we spoke about previously, Mark, that you see people have a mountain of supplements,
Yeah.
but their nutrition, like fundamentals, are terrible. So what they do is, rather than focusing on the fundamentals, they'll go to something that they think is easy and a quick fix, and it can actually be detrimental to them. And a lot of the time, it's a waste of money. One, they don't know what the supplements are doing for them. They don't know how to take them and how they interact with the body. So certain supplements have to be taken at certain times. They have to be taken with certain foods in order for them to be absorbed. There's lots and lots to consider. So with something like that, I don't want to be that guy that's not giving you an answer, but try and look at the fundamentals. Try and find something that they like, maybe from one of those sources that we'd mentioned earlier, and then introduce that into the nutrition plan.
In terms, so if we're racing at 9, breakfast roughly 7. Jay, you said sometimes you get hungry, but you wait. What about things like those sort of energy gels and stuff like that? What's your thought on energy gels and sort of like, you know, they do snack bars as well now, don't they?
Yeah. So first off, what we need to consider is, and again, I've seen this on lots and lots of occasions, you have to be prepared for it. Do not do nutrition, hydration, supplements just on the weekend of the race. Yeah. It is my pet hate. And even up here in Scotland, I still ride sometimes, and I'll see my clients that like literally running with their hood up like that, because like I've spotted them heading towards like the snack van, and basically I lose my emojis. Like I go bonkers, because you can ruin your race on that day. And again, we'll get into that with the kind of the hydration and fuel intake.
Yeah.
But yeah, energy gels, anything like that, you have to have trialed it prior. So again, do it under the same situation, under similar sort of circumstances. So whether it be like your training, your riding days, you have to do it when you're doing a similar sort of when you're in a similar sort of scenario, because it might be that it won't agree with you, it'll upset your stomach, you can cramp, you can have be running to the toilet every 2 seconds. So with things like that, I wouldn't take them prior to the first race. I don't agree with that. Hopefully you've got the nutrition there, but it might be that you need it later on in the day. But again, make sure it works for you. It's ideally with that sort of thing as well, you want a little break. So you want a kind of something that's got electrolytes in there with your carbohydrates, and the way that it's absorbed is you want a good quality, because a lot of them, again, are filled with, I would say, kind of poor quality nutrients and sugars and things like that are not going to agree with your gut, especially under really high intense situations. And you can see that sometimes even with runners as well, where they'll be taking energy gel after energy gel after energy gel, and the next thing that you see is there can be something running down their shorts, or they've lost bodily functions. This stuff happens because of poor nutrition plans. So Don't leave it to the weekend. Make sure that you've trialed it months, if not like weeks in advance. Never leave it to the race day.
I've got a story along those lines of things.
Go for it.
I was I think I was in MX2. I was a fat cat. And this trainer was like, he was overseeing us and stuff, and Jay struggling to get off the start. So 10 minutes, 20 minutes before race, he says, right, I've got these tablets. It was a caffeine tablet. Obviously spiked us. First 10 minutes of the race, I think, like, I was mint. Then I just, bang, just died. I think I went from like first to fifth within a couple of laps, literally everything. Like, I was up, and like Kev says, just bang, done my race. That was it for the weekend. So, like,
I think one thing
probably
I've taken
needed
from
to test it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, as I say, I think one thing I've taken from all these talks is if you're starting to do something on race day, you're doing it far too late and you haven't planned. Whether that's getting enough sleep, you know, making sure you're fit, and you know, nutrition. It's got to be a program, and it's got to be something you do every single day.
Yeah,
it's all preparation.
Yeah, if one thing is missing, it will have a knock-on effect on everything. Like the talk on nutrition, even this for me controls everything else. Okay.
Yeah.
But there are so many processes and interactions. If one thing is out of sync, you can be guaranteed that it's going to knock the rest out of sync.
Yeah.
But if we go into the next slide.
Sure.
Mark,
yeah.
Okay. So hydration. So we were talking about your nutrition and things like that. Hydration is very, very important and should not be underestimated anyway, especially in motocross. Now, what is normally the busiest part of a start line is the toilet, isn't it? People queued up. So a lot of the time, what you'll find is that what we're discussing, people hydrating on the day and taking too much on board. And the next thing, they are peeing like a racehorse, which is actually losing what they need in their body, and they're whizzing it straight out the door because they've not prepared properly. Now, from this slide, you can see the importance of water, okay? We're like, as a body, we're over 60% is water. But look at some of the percentages here: 75% for the brain, bones 22%, muscles 75%. This is really, really important. So, if you do not have enough fluid on board, then, as you can imagine, it's going to have a bad effect on your performance. So, water is key. You can even do like there's a simple kind of guide. If your pee is like dark color, then there's probably you're dehydrated. Okay. If your pee is absolutely clear and you would drink it again like Jay does, no, I'm only kidding. That is not
I do.
That's not a nutrition thing.
Don't try that at home, kids.
That's what I do on the start line.
So if it's clear, you've left it too late, you've drank gallons of water on the day, and you've fired it out. So too little water is bad for you, but also too much water can be bad for you. Okay. Again, we see that because people have not been taking their water on board during the week, and they've left it to race day. And the next thing is they've had 4 litres of water. They can end up in a hyponatremia state, cramping really bad. So it can have even more detrimental effects than not taking on water. So too much water, too little water, you're guaranteed that you're not going to perform well. Now, there are a couple of guidelines that we can look at with regards to that. So for motocross, right, it's one of the few sports that you can't rehydrate during the race. Even enduros, things like that, longer durations, you've got camelbacks or whatever. mountain biking, all those sorts of sports, 9 times out of 10, you've got time to rehydrate during the race. We don't have that ability. So we've got to consider that when we're developing your programs. So the importance of water, again, it regulates your body temperature. It helps with delivery and the conversion of nutrients, even for your brain. It helps to cushion your brain. You can see the percentage there. Even your spinal cord, things like that. Water is what is very, very important. So how much to take on the day? Now, as we've said, and I hate to keep going over this, every day is very different, okay? But if you have taken on enough water during the week, come race day, 1 to 2 hours before the race, you should probably be looking around 500 millilitres of water. Okay, so sipping on 500 millilitres of water. Then 30 minutes to approximately 5 minutes before the race, you would probably be looking at sipping around 250 millilitres of water, but don't gulp it as well, which we'll come to. And then, believe it or not, post-race, what I do in some cases is I've actually weighed the person beforehand, and I weigh them afterwards to see what their fluid loss is, because again, it can be very important, and that can range from 1.25 to 1.5 litres per kilogram of body weight lost. So, depending on how much weight that they have lost will depend on the fluid replenishment, and also the electrolyte aspect of it as well. What we need to look at. But there are very, very in-depth ways of doing it. But a simplified way would be to weigh yourself in your birthday suit or with boxer shorts on or whatever, and then do it again at the end. Don't weigh yourself with your kit on or soaking wet and sweat, because it'll throw your findings off. But you have got to regulate your fluid intake. That is really, really critical.
So Jay, question that's coming up quite a bit here, and you're obviously doing your water intake now. So you've got, let's say you're racing Sunday, Jay. What's your hydration routine through the week?
I normally just try and drink 2.5 litres a day of water.
So every day?
I just drink it every day.
Okay.
So
yeah.
But I literally have one glass of juice with me tea, and then the rest is just water. And then on a Sunday night after a race, I always want a fizzy can of pop. And then that's basically it, and then back to water.
So even with the hydration aspect of things, Jay has, with his nutrition program, has amounts that are written on there, but it's dependent on what he's doing on that day also. So if he's training or riding, the values can change slightly. So it's dependent on what you're doing and making sure that you're training, you're also taking on enough water on board, and it's all throughout the week. So going back to it, don't leave it till the very end.
We see lots of people, and I did a story with this. We see lots of people walking around with these energy drinks, your Red Bulls, your Monsters. They're pumping millions into advertising. Good or bad? For
me, I dislike them with a passion. Even your guys that are on the podium with their can of Monster, can of Red Bull, I will guarantee, in fact, I know.
It's water, isn't it?
They will not drink it, right?
They won't. It's water. It's actually water that's in there.
It's water, or they don't even have a drink.
Or they haven't pulled the ring pull.
Yeah. And half the time it's bad water at that, because it's stinking. It's been in the can for months and months. But these things, especially for kids, so they can be riddled with caffeine, really, really high amounts of caffeine, which can make them irritable. And again, that big crash can come on. So try and keep away from it. Even the carbonation can affect the circulation of blood and to muscles. So keep away from all these fizzy drinks at the race. Just don't do it. That's the bottom line. I know some people think that it helps them, but believe me, that is affecting your performance. Keep away from them.
So regular intake of water through the week, and then roughly half a litre when you wake up, and then about 250 just before you go out to race. So roughly
and then
to summarise it.
Just that's very, very roughly. So
Yes.
upon waking, you would take a drink of water, then you would have another drink of water afterwards, and then when you come back in from racing, you want to be sipping your water. Try not to gulp it, because you want your system to calm down and try and relax. And you see people that come in and they're like getting all wound up, and they're just stressing themselves even more. So try and relax when you're taking your water on. Try not to gulp it. And I know it's hard because you've had so much fluid loss, but just sip away at it and let your body replenish and do it in a nice calm state. Okay. So, I mean, the final slide, there are lots and lots. Even if we look at your fuel on race day, so the nutrition aspect of it, okay? We were talking about timings, like for breakfast. So for breakfast, again, I would be looking at something like oats and like a good berry or something that's not too high in sugars and going to give that kind of spike. So something that's slow released. So the athlete would look to take that maybe 2 to 3 hours in advance. Prior to the race, like maybe an hour, say, like Jay, if he's peckish, then sometimes like some berries, but nothing that's too fibrous. It's going to unsettle his stomach and make him run to the toilet. And then again, like after the race, like after it, you see people having big meals and things. I would kind of go against that. You should have done your work in all the weeks leading up to the race, that you're keeping your fuel consistent. You've got enough energy stores there. Don't put anything too heavy into your body on race day, because it can sit there and it can affect you. And as you say, we see people not nipping off to the burger van. That's a big no-no in performance terms. So keep away from that. Keep away from the caffeine as well, because it can act like a diuretic, so it can actually dehydrate you. So we don't want to be taking anything like that on board, even though you might think, oh, I need this boost or whatever. Get it as naturally as you can to help you through the day. And do not forget that when the race day is done, it is very, very important to refuel your body. Now, like Jay says, he likes, let's put it out there, crappy food afterwards, but it's really important. So even within, say, 30 minutes to an hour after like race day is done, it's a really, really good time for your body to absorb nutrients. So try and get good nutrients in there to replenish your glycogen stores, help with muscle repair, which in turn will help with your recovery.
Question here. There's a few questions around lunch, so I've just picked this one. Jay, you in MX, if I remember rightly, MXY2, you would go out about 9 for your practice, then you'd have a race, then it would be around lunchtime, and then you'd go out again. And so, what would you eat for lunch?
Oh, I can't remember that far back to MXY2.
Sorry, MX. My apologies, MX2.
Oh, MX2.
Sorry, I put a Y in by mistake. That's yeah.
Well, obviously, I'd have the breakfast, like I said before, but then I'd have like a snack, berries, green apple, maybe kiwi. And then for lunch, I'd say I'd have maybe plain pasta, chicken, stuff like that. But like, obviously not loads. I'd pick at it. I wouldn't like eat a full tub at once, and just so obviously it stops you getting stitches and all that stuff, and you don't feel too full.
And the work is done in the days, or not days, weeks. It's all off season the whole way through. Your nutrition plan has to be put in place. But let's look at things like, so I'll give you a quick, food is not all the same, like I showed you, right? We have that donut, okay? Now that's 350 odd calories that I'm going to consume as soon as I come off this call, okay? But in comparison, okay, that is roughly the same, okay? So you've got 3.5 apples there. Now, some people will say, oh, as long as you're hitting your macros, etc., as long as you're getting that food in, That's not the case. It is about the quality of the food, okay? So let's look at some things as well to give people an idea, okay? So I have one banana, okay, is yellow. One banana, oh, what, Jay, what? Oh. One banana is green, okay? And then I have another banana here is brown. Now, would you all agree they're all bananas? Yeah. Now, the way that these are processed by the body is completely different, okay? So this banana here looks like Jay's haircut, right? So this banana here is like pure sugar. This is going to go straight in, give you like a hit of pure sugar. This banana here is very, very starchy. So it's actually harder for the system to break it down, and it takes longer for the nutrients to be absorbed, etc. Whereas this banana here is probably ideal in the way you want it. It's just on the turn. So as you can see, they're not all the same. They have different impacts on the system. And believe it or not, they all have different benefits as well when you take them on. And even with something like a green apple and a red apple, there are differences in the way that they're absorbed. So this one's a little bit sweeter. This one's a little bit more tart, maybe a little bit more acidic. That might not agree with everybody. Same with this one. Again, quite fibrous or whatever, but there are differences in your food. Even things like, I like kiwis for in between races because they're really, really high in potassium. Sometimes with bananas, as I've said, people have them at the wrong point. So the way that they're broken down, you can even feel like a lining on your throat and you feel a little bit, whereas you get lots and lots of potassium from a kiwi, really high in vitamin C as well. It's got good water content. So you're helping with that side of things as well. And things like watermelon in between races might give you a little bit of a sugar spike, but again, lots of water in there, lots of beneficial vitamins and minerals, so it can help you on race day.
Time for two more questions. So one more then. I've heard this as well around the paddock. Arm pump. I know some riders, really struggle with arm pump. Is it linked to food and hydration, or is that a myth?
So arm pump, there are multiple causes of arm pump. It can be something as simple as somebody holding on to that bike with a death grip, not using their core, not using their legs or ankles to control the bike, and they're holding on. However, it can be linked. So like we were saying, your carbonated drinks, high caffeine, and then you crash, that can affect your circulation of blood through the system, which will let your lactate build up, your glycogen storage can be depleted, things like that. So arm pump can be related to nutrition. Don't underestimate it. Again, it just shows you the importance of nutrition. So yeah, arm pump can be related to it. Are there any specific drinks out there that can alleviate it altogether? Not that I am aware of. Lots of these, as you've mentioned, lots of these sports drinks make lots of presumptions, or they say that they can do lots of things, but in essence, it's marketing ploys rather than in-depth studies, and the efficacy of a lot of them is desirable, to say the least. So make sure that you've done your homework. Make sure that it works for you. As I said, that there can be more beneficial for some people than a kind of Monster Energy or something like that, which will have a negative impact on your riding. It will.
We touched on hydration earlier, and you guys were saying about water. John Hall's asked, are we better drinking just water or adding dissolvable tablets as well?
So again, dissolvable tablets, what are we talking about? Are we talking about salt tablets? Are we talking about your SIS things? Sometimes what you can do is you can take your energy gels and mix them with the water in order to help with absorption and maybe not unsettle the stomach quite as much. I'm a big fan of water and making sure that you've got your hydrations level with that, but we do need electrolytes as well because we are sweating profusely. If you notice that you've stopped sweating, then you better get some hydration in. If you're sweating plenty, it's probably a good sign. Again, look at the colour of your urine and things like that. But your energy gels can come into play. And even sometimes if you're really, really struggling and you're short on something like your isotonic drinks, again, I would probably mix it with water. I wouldn't take it straight. I would be doing a mixture of the majority of it water and say a third the isotonic drink so that it's getting uptake and it doesn't have distress your gut or have too bad an impact upon you.
Jay, do you know John Hall?
Maybe if I see him, I'm not the best with names. I've had too many knocks to the head.
Well, he's asking, are Jay's monster cans full of water?
I don't have no monster cans.
So I assume it's someone that knows you. Listen, guys, incredibly fascinating. Thank you very, very much. So to summarize, really, again, preparation is key here, right? It's absolutely key. If you get to the racetrack and you're not properly hydrated, you've not been feeding your body right, you've left it too late. You know, I think as you and I said when we were off air, Kevin, that if you got motocross dads sending their engine over to Eddie van der Faster in Holland or whoever, spending $3,000 tuning it and then sending their kids to the burger bar, the priorities are wrong. So
you've hit the nail on the head. Focus on yourself with your training, your nutrition. That money will be far better spent. Let's be perfectly honest. Lots and lots of people out there cannot ride these bikes to their full capabilities, and having a set of anodized pegs is not going to make the bike go any faster. Okay, having your engine done, having your suspension done or whatever, but spend the money on developing yourself. Get a good trainer, get a good nutritionist, or if you can't afford them, which many people can't, let's try and make this accessible for people. I'll try and help people where I can, but try and do your research. Look into things. There's plenty out there, but do your research. Look at the efficacy of things. So there are lots and lots of studies, but make sure that they're peer reviewed. It's not just a case of that. For example, Monster have carried out a study of 200 Monster people, and they've been funding it. You get what I mean? It's like, do your study. And that's the problem. Like, nutrition is such a minefield. There is so much information out there, but the efficacy of a lot of things, we're always learning, we're always evolving. And even like we're talking about the quality of foods that you take on. Now, something like that, I'm going to be perfectly honest, you want to try and get it as organic and as fresh as you can, because nowadays apples are steeped in chemicals. Lots of our foods are they're not as natural as they should be. They're pumped full of MSGs or all sorts of things. So make sure that your fuel sources are as good, as natural, as fresh as they can be. That's really, really important. Get your food from local suppliers if you can. Try and find out like what they use. Get it when it's in season as well, because you see lots and lots of foods now are brought over from all these countries, and it makes me wonder, what have they been steeped in? What chemicals have been put on these apples or
strawberries in January?
Yeah, you've hit it in the head. Okay, so things like that. Try and focus on your nutrition, getting the best possible sources, trying to get it when it's in season. Work out things that are going to work for your body. It can be doing something as simple as tracking what you eat. So make a little note in a diary. It's a great thing, or use a fitness tracker or whatever. Write everything down that passes your mouth, and even like an hour afterwards or an hour and a half, you can make a little note and just go, you know, that didn't agree with me, or I felt uncomfortable, or my throat felt funny, or something. Keep a little note and then decipher it for yourself, Like nutritionists can help, but you can do some groundwork yourself there and try and work it out. So not everybody can afford a nutritionist. Not everybody can afford coaches and things like that. So do a little bit of homework, do a little bit of research, and there's lots and lots of things that you can do to benefit your performance. And be mindful that not all foods are created the same. Not everything is equal, but try and get it from natural sources, quality sources, organic, even your meats and things like that. Make sure that they've not been filled with steroids, that they've been out to pasture. Even, for example, salmon. If you can, get wild salmon. You don't want something that's been fish farmed. We all know what it's swimming about. And once you think about it, do you really want to eat that? Because what's that doing in your body? Okay, have a thought process about it. And if you need to, get somebody on board. So just to summarise, nutrition is of the utmost importance. Hopefully everybody can see that. If you're wanting to race motocross, it is one of the most demanding sports in the world. If you've not got your nutrition looked at, then you're not going to be performing to your full potential. It's not simple, but let me tell you, it is worth it. Before you spend a penny on that bike, invest the time and the money in yourself. Okay, that is a takeaway from this, is invest the money and the time in yourself. Nutrition is a massive, massive part of it. And anyone will tell you, your mind coach, your trainer, nutrition is a huge, huge percentage. I'm not going to put it into percentages, but if this is out of whack, the other things can just fall by the wayside because it's all interconnected. If everything has to work synergistically to make you a complete athlete. Another thing, everyone is different. As we said, what works for Jay is not going to work for me. What works for me is not going to work for you. We're all different, so that has to be taken into consideration. We've said about choosing your sources of nutrition wisely. Do your research. Choose what works for you. So like we were saying, maybe keep a note of everything you eat for a couple of weeks. Make a note an hour after you've eaten it. Make a note how it makes you feel. And that can give you just an insight into what maybe works and what doesn't work for you. It's quite simplified, but again, for those that don't have the ability to get a nutritionist, it's quite a simple method and it can be quite effective. Practice makes perfect, as with everything. Do not leave it to race day. You're literally pissing in the wind, and it'll be clear, okay? So don't leave it to race day. Be prepared. Do it through the season. If you're going to change things up, make sure you've done it weeks in advance. Don't do it on the day. It's going to end up in a catastrophe for you. So, in essence, be prepared. Do your homework. If I can help, my contacts at the bottom there. And hopefully,
well, actually, Kevin, just give yourself a plug. Where can they find you, on Instagram, or where's the best place to get you?
I'm actually quite hard to get a hold of because, as you've maybe seen from my socials, I'm not big on it. So even like the talk on sleep and blue light, all that sort of things, I have a big dislike for socials because it's making heroes out of numpties a lot of the time. So best thing is contact me via Kevin at Step 1 Fitness there at the bottom, or if you can, if maybe people message you, they're more than welcome to contact me. I will get back to you, or even the socials. I'm on Instagram, Step 1 Fitness.
Or they could message me and I'll try and get in touch with them.
Yeah, you were very kind and put us in. You were very kind, Jay.
As I say, I'm not a big fan of it because of what it's doing to society in general. And so, yeah, I'll not get into that. But I hope this has helped something. And can I just say, Mark, what a brilliant job you're doing. The people that you've had on, the people that you've got coming on, it's brilliant what you're doing for people. It's a great thing, and I'm proud and I'm happy that you asked me to come on board. And hopefully, if we can help one person, that'll be massive. So thank you very much. Keep up the
pleasure. And Jay, just quickly to summarise for you, it's about routine, right? It's about doing the right thing all of the time. I mean, you
Yeah.
said there you've completely changed what you do, and your results have got better.
Yeah, it's all just preparation. It's all just a full-time thing, like, as well as down to sleep, food, training. It's all just preparation, and all helps when it comes to the race day.
And if people want to follow you, Jay, where's the best place to get you? Instagram, Twitter, Facebook?
Instagram. Nah, I don't really have Twitter, but Instagram or Facebook. But
What do you on Instagram? Give yourself a plug.
Badbarber.com.
Jay Hague 277.
Thank you. Listen, guys, thank you so much. A really, really, really interesting topic. This is the last one of our live panels tomorrow. We've got Joe Brooks joining us, fresh from his win at Hawkstone. And we've also got Dan Thornhill from Cab Screens Yamaha joining us. Both of them are in preparation for Matterley this weekend because Eunice came in and decided Matterley wasn't going to happen last weekend. So they're mid-training for that. So we're going to be talking motos, sprints, and everything you need to be doing to be ready for when the gate drops. Kevin, thank you very much. Jay, thank you very, very much. To everyone else, see you later.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Mark.
Bye.
Bye.